Today, we meet two women of achievement who are being honored for their volunteer activities and for their leadership. That's next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. Today we're going to meet two of the Women of Achievement honorees. There are 10 altogether this year for 2021. They represent St. Louis, or they come from St. Louis and the region, and the 10 will be featured on PBS Channel 9 coming up September the 13th, and today we're going to meet two of them. Let's meet our first guest right now. Please welcome Rachel Goldman Miller.
Good afternoon.
Whatever it is.
Right? Well, I think it is afternoon. It's past 1 o'clock.
Right. It's afternoon somewhere all the time.
Right.
It's really nice to be here, for you to be here, and you being recognized for your lifetime of service. And boy, what a lifetime it's been, huh?
A difficult one at times.
At times. You have such a compelling story that we're going to get to. Your St. Louis story really, I guess, started in 1994. I think that was the year that you moved here?
We moved here actually it was 1993 permanently, but we started to come here in 1990 because our oldest son and grandchildren were here. Uh-huh. And you know, when it comes to grandchildren,
oh, yeah,
you have to be near them.
Right, but in your lifetime, you lived a lot of different places, including New York for a lot of years. But let's go all the way back. You were actually born in Paris, France in 1933, but it was just the year before that your family moved from Poland. Would you explain what happened?
There was a lot of anti-Semitism in Poland, and my father was supposed to serve in the army, and he had a brother and a sister living in Paris. And my mother had two brothers living in Paris, so they decided to move to Paris because they were family-oriented. We used to get together on Saturday nights and have these wonderful parties with lots of goodies, cake, candy, and ice cream. It was wonderful.
Here's your family. Who are? Why don't you point them out?
Well, my father on the third row left, my mother next to him, and my oldest brother next to my mother. On the second row, my brother Henri and my sister Sabine. And on the third row, it's me. And we were in the country, and it was summertime, and it was lovely. It was very lovely.
Your story really, a lot of it, is really about a horrific, historic experience, one that you survived and I guess actually thrived after, but what a thing to go through. A little bit later, I want to talk to you about a nonprofit that you founded, but first, there's a reason that you tell your story often, isn't there?
Yes, it is. I feel that I am history, and I need to educate people about my history. And this is why I do a lot of speaking in different schools, different venues, churches, community centers, and so forth and so on. And I think it's important. I want people to know what happened in World War II, and they killed 6 million Jews, but in reality, they actually killed 23 million people. The Nazis did.
Really?
They killed gays. They killed Jehovah's Witnesses. They killed, I just said Jehovah's Witnesses. They killed 3 million Russians, and they killed, and they killed, and they killed. And we talk about the Jews because it was one that is selected to exterminate. That's the only reason we talk about the Jews. But in reality, it was 23 million people. Can you imagine such an educated, cultured civilization to do this and follow a madman and do whatever they wanted to do?
No, it's hard
It's
to
hard to
understand, but that's sort of interesting because you run into people, you talk about it, who are sort of Holocaust deniers. What's going on with them?
Actually, I had the experience of talking to middle school boys, and their principal brought them to the Holocaust Museum because they were deniers, and they were in 14 and 15, and they came to listen to my story. And then I told them about what happened if they were taken to a camp. I mentioned Auschwitz because that's probably the most popular one. And I said to what, there were 3 of them, I said to this one, you probably would not go and work. You would go to the showers, and you would go to the showers. And the one that I said to, you'd go to the showers, I said, well, you're not tall enough. And he got up and he says, I'm taller than him. He was afraid even of the conversation that I was having with him because going to the showers meant that he was being exterminated. And the one that was the one that was able to work would become slave labor.
Mm. When you were little, at some point, well, the first thing that happened bad in your family happened to your father, isn't that right?
Exactly. My father was taken in August of 1941. One of our neighbors came over and knocked at the door and said,
And just because he was Jewish.
Right.
Right.
Oh, of course. And actually the French did all the dirty work for the Nazis. Mm. They were the ones that did the dirty work.
Well, after your father, he was a victim of a medical experiment, is that what they called it?
That's correct. And my uncle.
And wasn't it something like 90 of your relatives? 90?
93. I lost 93 people in my family.
How do you deal with that?
Very difficult. But like I said, it's my history and I have to educate.
Well, after that happened to your dad, I guess your mom was trying to protect you. And I guess she hooked you up with some Catholic family in Paris and sent you there, and you had to keep your religion a secret. What was that like?
It was very difficult, but you know, I never made a mistake. My name was Christine, as opposed to Rachel. It's the way to pronounce the French way, it's Rachel. Uh-huh. I never made a mistake, and I was 9 years old.
Wow.
I knew that I could not make a mistake because I would be taken away.
I barely remember stuff when I was 9, but I have a feeling maybe some of those things are just embedded. Do you have a lot of clear memories from that time in your life?
Oh, absolutely. I think when you go through trauma, tremendous trauma, it stays with you, and you remember everything.
Your mom was going to send your sister, but she never showed up.
My aunt promised my sister a handbag. Her birthday was July the 15th, and my mother was sending me away with my sister, who I absolutely adored. She's my idol. She still is. I miss her terribly, and it's over 70 years, but I still miss her. And my friend Cecile. But because my aunt promised her a handbag, she stayed in Paris. So I left. On the 13th, my mother told me that my new name was to be Christine, and I was not allowed to tell anyone that I was Jewish. The only one that would know that I was Jewish was the farmer where we were going and my friend Cecile, because she knew me and she knew I was Jewish and she was not.
I could talk to you about 3 hours just about this. Just to make a long story short, you were about 13, I guess, when you came to the United States. You were married for 47 years or something like that, right?
Yes.
And you finally ended up in St. Louis in 1994 because you had a son here that you wanted to be close with him. You mentioned the grandchildren thing.
Right.
But in the minutes we have left, I know you founded, among a lot of other things you've done, you founded the nonprofit Shaving Israel.
Right.
Explain that.
I was in Israel for a mission, and a friend of mine, there is a program called Sorel, And that's where you go and volunteer for 3 weeks and do all the menial jobs so the soldiers can do whatever they have to do. So Carol came and she told me they needed some items. So I decided that I was going to send it to them. However, some of the items that I was going to send to them were too expensive to ship. So then we started with a new idea, and we established Shaving Israel, and we help soldiers.
And just with like toiletries and little things
Right.
to make their life just a little bit better, right? Uh-huh. I read somewhere where you said sometimes you look back, and I'm assuming you were talking about the fact that you survived, but you say you felt guilty. Is that what you meant by that?
Oh, absolutely. Why would I survive when my sister did not, my brothers? I mean, what did they do that they had to die? Not die, murdered. So yes, I felt very guilty. It took me a long, long time to get over the guilt.
There's a Holocaust Museum, is that what they call it here in St. Louis? St.
Yes.
Louis Holocaust Museum?
Right.
And I understand you speak there a lot. You tell this story in more detail there a lot. Why do you think it's so important that people understand, and I guess particularly young people, that all they maybe see a movie about it or read it in a history book, but why do they need to hear it from you?
Well, they need to know that they need to respect themselves so that they can respect other people, so that they will not do some of the atrocities that occurred during the war. And by telling my story, my history, I'm educating young people. But it's not just young people, it's
There
adults.
are people my age that probably don't know enough about
adults,
it.
I mean, you know, it's everyone. Whenever I have the opportunity to speak, I do.
If there was one message, let me back up. What's the kind of reaction you get from people? I bet you can tell when it sort of touches them, and is there like a light bulb go off in their head sometimes?
I will tell you, I have spoken to thousands of people, and only twice I've had to tell children, this happened to be 2 children, not to laugh when I was speaking.
Not to laugh.
Not to laugh. For the most part, they are very attentive. As a matter of fact, there was a high school student who, I have a drawer full of letters like this, that they've sent me, and he told me that he bought himself a Jewish star after hearing me speak.
A Jewish star.
Because he wanted to feel the connection.
Do you kind of feel sometimes kind of connect when we have other things going on in our society right now, discrimination among groups of people and people making judgments about things? Does that must kind of ring a bell, home to you?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Sarah Thompson, who drove me here, and I was telling her that there is so much racism and so much anti-Semitism now. This is not the country that I came to.
Well, you know what, Rachel? I think people like you are going to make it a better place.
I hope so.
And listen, we want to congratulate you on being one of the 2021 Women of Achievement, and keep on talking because you got a lot of important things to say.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure having you. And
Thank
we'll meet
you.
another Woman of Achievement right after this.
There's so many reasons to love St. Louis, you can't pick just one. From the arts, architecture, and culture. An all-new development, including the Cortex Community Center. And you're never too far from great music and entertainment.
So come and experience St. Louis.
Operation Wonder Park is a go!
There's nothing more powerful than imagination. But don't just imagine. Use STEM to change the world.
Who's with me?
Oh, it's gonna hurt tomorrow.
If she can STEM, so can you. Find out more at She Can STEM.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it here. So what are you waiting for? Just go to the site.
I'm Steve Potter, and welcome back to City Corner. Well, the 2021 Women of Achievement have been announced, and we'd like to meet another one now. That's Rebecca Bennett. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome to City Corner.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
And talk about stories. You have one to tell, but we just heard from Rachel Miller. Did she have a story or what?
Oh, my goodness. It really moved me, touched my heart.
There are 10 honorees altogether. Have you all met?
We have. We've had a couple of experiences and events together.
September 13th is the date the awards is going to air on PBS Channel 9, so I hope people will take a look at that.
Yes.
But your focus, or something you've mentioned, I want you to explain it to me, is a term that I'm not familiar with, and
Sure.
that's structural inequities.
Yes.
So explain that to me.
So in our culture, we're so used to thinking about discrimination and racism in individual ways, right? I don't like you because you're black, or I don't like you because you're gay, or I don't like you because you're a woman, or whatever those things are. But structural inequities is really about the ways in which our systems and institutions are organized and make choices that put people at risk or put them in danger. So for example, if I live in a zip code that's poor, and the schools in my zip code have less money because schools are based upon tax basis, then that means just by virtue of where I live, I'm gonna probably be in a school that has less funding and that has less of an ability to give me a high quality education. Now that's no single person saying we wanna make sure that this kid doesn't learn or doesn't have, but it's the way our systems and structures operate so that it puts children in those places at a disadvantage, and that's structural inequities.
Right. It's like an environmental thing.
Indeed.
Yeah.
It's about systems behavior, not individual behavior.
You're the founder of something called Emerging Wisdom LLC and the Empower Institute. Can you briefly tell me about those?
Right. So Emerging Wisdom is a consulting firm, but I'm in the business of helping communities and organizations figure out how to solve difficult and hard problems, usually things that are too big for any single institution. So the Ferguson Commission was a client of mine, and I got to do all the community engagement for that, right? But issues like racism or environmental remediation or community development, no one institution can say, oh, we're gonna change that, and that's that. Right? So usually you need lots of different institutions and community members, and I help to lead those kinds of processes. And then Empower Institute is a center for community healing, because I've done a lot of work with systems and structures, and they've done a lot of damage, right? I look at Rachel, who you interviewed earlier, and I think, look at how wonderful, how beautiful a human being she is. But she had a lot of trauma.
Oh, yeah.
And she probably needed help in being able to recover from that so that she could make the contribution she needed to the world. And that's what Empower Institute does.
Well, we haven't talked about COVID yet.
No, no.
I want to share a little video clip. I think this is going to be part of the award ceremony that PBS 9 is going to broadcast.
Sure.
But this is you, just addressing the COVID situation and how it impacts people?
Well, I have had the opportunity to spend the last 17 months leading COVID response in our region with lots of others, particularly for those who are disproportionately impacted. So African Americans, foreign-born community members of color, right? And one of the things that I've noticed is that women have been at the helm of our crisis response as a region. Mm-hmm. And so I acknowledge the very importance of women who were raising kids, educating kids at home, and working and responding to crisis and managing health, all of those things. And so that clip is really about how we really need to do a deep bow to women for helping our society move through this crisis.
Well, let's listen to you right now talk about that.
Sure. COVID-19 has presented us with the biggest global crisis in a century. Right? Not since the Spanish flu have we seen a pandemic or public health issue of this magnitude and this scale across every country, every population, every group of people in the world, right? And as our country begins to come out of the throes of the pandemic because of vaccinations and other kinds of mitigation efforts, I think it's important for us to reflect on whose labor and effort got us through this crisis. And the single greatest community of people who helped us move through one of the biggest pains that we have ever collectively experienced have been women. I think it's important to say that because I think if we don't, what will happen is we take it for granted. Women have been centered in providing care for the people who were sick and dying. Women have been centered in our healthcare systems in terms of delivery of healthcare. Women have been largely responsible for teaching and educating our children, right, in the midst where education systems shut down and we didn't have access to the child care or to the instructional supports that make our society work. Women made private life and public life work in the midst of this crisis. And I think if we don't acknowledge the commitment, the sacrifice, the skillfulness of women and how essential they were in our ability to move through this crisis and then come out stronger, I think that we as a community have failed. So I appreciate Women of Achievement because it's before its time in acknowledging how much women's leadership, women's decision-making, women's sacrifice, women's hard work, and women's effort has been the backbone of our success as communities. And I think COVID was proof of concept of the importance of women in leading and in working to ensure the stability of our societies and communities. My hope is that as we come out of this, we don't retreat from that understanding, that we in fact create more opportunities for women to lead and for women to serve, right? And that we acknowledge how essential their contributions are to the maintenance of life on this planet. I think to do anything less is insulting, right? So, you know, I feel passionate. I feel passionate about that. But I think it has to be stated, which is not to undervalue the role that men have played, but it is to say that without women in this crisis, nothing would have worked. So I'm hoping that we come out of this with an even greater commitment to supporting women in leading and achieving, quite honestly. And I'm grateful that Women of Achievement has been a pathfinder in acknowledging the contributions of women.
That's Rebecca Bennett, one of the 2021 Women of Achievement. And do you think so? Do you think we're going to get through this and we're going to be better in the long run? I hope you're right.
I think we're going to get through this. Whether or not we get better really has to do with whether or not we make choices to ensure that those who have been disproportionately impacted by this virus are better off, right? We want to all be better off, but to do that, we're going to have to reinforce our public health system, right? We're going to have to make the kinds of decisions that keep us safe and well. We don't want to return to normal. We want to take and use this crisis to make life better for all of us.
Yeah, normal, whatever that is. Hey, I want to run down your bio kind of real quick. Now, originally you're from Michigan.
No, originally I'm from Washington, D.C.
Did you live in Michigan?
I did for graduate school.
So you're from Washington, D.C.
I'm from Washington,
You went to
D.C.
school in Michigan.
I did.
Then was it St. Louis after that or somewhere in between?
St. Louis was after that. I went to school a couple of places, but yes, St. Louis was after that.
Why did you decide to make St. Louis your home?
There's a program called the Coro Fellows Program in Public Affairs, and I became a Coro Fellow, and they brought me here to St. Louis.
Well, you're involved in so many different things. We just have a couple of minutes left. I just want to
Sure.
throw out a couple of organizations and that you've played a part in. I think you've actually formed most of them. But let's see. You mentioned the Forward Through Ferguson already. Also, there is a charter school of some sort. Did you start?
Well, I got a chance to be on the founding board of a charter school called Jama Learning Center, so yes.
What makes that special?
Jama was really a neighborhood-based effort to help children learn in North City, so a community-based school. And so it's a wonderful opportunity at that time to have schools in places where there had been school closures and other kinds of things, but children still need to learn wherever they live.
Speaking of kids, what about that group that you're involved in, Boys Help, Girls Help?
Oh, Boys Hope, Girls Hope.
Hope.
Yes,
Yeah.
Boys Hope, Girls Hope. So Boys Hope, Girls Hope provides academic supports and housing supports for children and families that are experiencing great amounts of transition in their lives.
Well,
so
Rebecca
it's
Bennett,
my pleasure to serve.
you know, you've done a whole lot of other things we don't have time to talk about, but I can see why you were named one of the 2021 Women of Achievement. And of course, you're all going to be honored. It's going to be on Channel 9 PBS on September the 13th. But
Indeed.
Thank you so much for making our community a better place. Keep at it.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet. That's the Women of Achievement Award celebration. Be sure and see that Monday, September the 13th, 7 p.m. on PBS 9. Well, I'm Steve Potter. That's all the time we have for City Corner. And you want to thank the great women of achievement who have joined us today, and hope you join us next time. Bye.